Record this session, so the recording is started. And we'll welcome everyone this morning to the Hayes software system Understanding Audits in TIPWeb 4-part series. Today we're going to be looking at part 2, which is conducting your audit. So yesterday our session talked about planning, and we talked about all the cool things that you need to think of and get in place prior to conducting your audit. So if you missed that, the recording is up on our support site. It's in the same location as where the link that takes you today to get our documentation for today's session. So please take time to watch that. It's in total, it's about 38 minutes. So it's not too long, and it will definitely make your audits go easier if you will remember to do the planning piece. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Gina Blankenship. I'm a trainer and consultant for Hayes Software Systems. I've been doing that for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I did work in Deming Public Schools, which is Southwest New Mexico, as a director for 20 years. And within those 20 years there at the end, the last 4 years or so, we were a customer of Hayes. We used TIPWeb-IT. I was involved in implementation and day-to-day use and management of the software. So I have lots of experience in district as well as in application. And then after I retired, I started training for Hayes in both TIPWeb-IT and GetHelp. So if you're looking for audit handouts and resources for our 4-part series, you can find those on our website by going to support.hayessoft.com and searching audits-4-part series. That'll take you almost straight to it. Also, I have included a link in the chat session, and I'll do that one more time for those folks that just logged in, because sometimes you can't see the chat prior to your login, just in case you need to look at those handouts. So that TIPWeb-IT audit training manual has all the information that I'm sharing and more. So I'm summarizing that manual for you today and showing you some in-application examples of how things work. And so for those of you who are just joining, in the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a Q&A button. We're going to use that for our question and answer sessions today. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A setting. Feel free to chat amongst each other in the chat session, but we'll pull those questions out because they tend to get buried in the chat session. Sometimes they're hard to find. And then when I go to address your question, we'll unmute you so that we can have a back and forth conversation and you don't have to try to type out a response to my answer and so on. So we can really be thorough about answering those questions the best we can. So let's get right into the session then. We'll start looking at things that we need to remember to address before we start an audit, right? So we talked about planning yesterday. So we know that we have to know when we're doing the audits, where we're doing the audits, what types of products we're auditing, and who's going to be involved in those audits. What do we need, like keys and ladders and all those silly things that we tend to forget till the last minute. So at this point, we have our audit plan in hand. We know the answers to all those questions. So before we start the audit, there's some in-application things that we need to make sure that we're doing. Some of these things are important tasks that just absolutely have to be done prior to starting the audit in order for your audit to go smoothly. And others are just things that you should consider that may be done on a different timeline depending on the district. But they also have this effect on the audit and how the audit goes. So important tasks. We want to make sure that we close all open audits that include assets in the coming audit. So if your district has done previous audits before and didn't get quite all the way through the reconciliation process, we need to take care of those. If you have sites that do room audits and you're auditing that site, you need to make sure all those room audits are completed and closed. So anytime you have an audit, an asset can only be involved in one audit at a time. So if I try to initiate an audit at an elementary school where there are previous audits, or there's a tag at that school that's involved in another audit, even if let's say the audit was last month at another site altogether, and somewhere along the line, that tag got transferred to this site, you're going to get an error because tags can only be in one audit at a time. So we want to go through and make sure that we open anything or close anything that's been opened. And one best practice thing to remember is if you open an audit, finish it. And we want to make sure everybody understands that throughout. Okay, so we also want to stop all new site-to-site transfers between sites with upcoming audits. So if we're transferring tags from one site to another, and those transfers are in a status other than new or complete, then that could cause a problem with our audit. So we want to stop that if at all possible. And there's some districts, the large districts, that do a great number of transfers, site-to-site transfers every day, that might find this a little difficult, but talk about it with your planning committee. See if it makes sense. The best practice is to just say, okay, everybody, we're going to start our audits, say Monday the 1st. So as of Friday the 29th, no more site audits. And then along the same lines there, we're going to make sure that all audits that are in transit status have been received. So we want to complete all active transfers as well before starting that audit. So think about it this way. If I have transfers in process and I initiate an audit, basically the initiation of that audit freezes the information in the database. So it's like taking a snapshot of your database. So if tag number 10 is at elementary school A, but it's in a transfer and I take a snapshot, then the audit's going to show tag 10 at elementary A. And then if I continue before elementary A actually does scanning and I actually finish the transfer, then now the real-time location for that tag and the snapshot frozen location for that tag in the audit are different. So we're going to have some issues there when it comes down to scanning and reconciling the audit. So these are very, very important things to consider. So, I mean, to get done. Now, things to consider. Review the district settings for audit. So you're going to just take a look at your district settings and see what they're set to and make sure they are what you want for your audit. Now, we tend to not think about this because we only do audits maybe once a year and we don't look at it closely. Maybe there's been some updates to those settings and some other things we can do throughout the year within the application. So we want to take a look at that, and I'll show you briefly where you'll find those. And then we want to also consider archiving any assets that have been disposed since the last audit. So depending on how your district operates and when assets are archived normally for your district, then that's going to kind of depend on how you look at that particular thing to consider. It's going to depend, right, on what your processes are already in place. If you say, oh, we're going to archive at the end of the school year, anything that's been disposed over the past school year, then that may or may not line up right with your audit. Maybe you have a policy that says, hey, archiving is going to happen right before every audit. That way, those assets that have been disposed are not, you know, they're not in your district, so therefore they will not be scanned in the audit. They won't even show up in the audit, so they don't show as missing. So those are things to consider. So now that you have that handy dandy information, I'm going to jump over to the actual application and we'll take a look at what these things look like before we actually initiate our audit. So remember, we have our audit plan in place already. We already know where we're doing the audit, what products we're auditing, what types of rooms, and those sorts of things. So really quickly, we're going to look on the left-hand side. We have the management menu. I am logged in right now, administrative access to the admin view. So I'm looking at the whole district and I'm going to go and find district settings. Now in the district settings section under inventory management settings, we have a section for audits. So these are going to kind of control some of the ways audits are addressed in your district. So are we going to allow district initiated audits to be approved by site admins or only by the district folks? So that comes into play after all the scanning is done and I think that site is complete. Am I going to trust my site administrator to say, "Whoop, that's good, I'm approving it"? Are they going to be the ones that say, yes, we feel like we're done scanning? Or am I going to have somebody at the district play that role? So again, that's going to depend on how your district is lined out. And remember, if you were here yesterday and you have a team leader in your site, then that person very well could know if the if the audit is done well enough for approval. So you can set this. I'm going to leave mine at site admins. Allow manual synchronization of found items across open audits that have been reconciled. That's a long way around a process that is in place for synchronizing audits that are not opened at the same time. Best practice would be for you to open all your audits at the same time. So if we're going to audit an entire district, we figure out how long that's going to take, even if it's like a 2-week period, and we open the audits and close the audits kind of together. So we open all the audits at the same time, and then the synchronization works wonderfully and perfectly across the audits. Now, if you can't do it that way, your district is kind of larger, then you could possibly turn this guy on. My only caveat would be that you might want to talk to support about that, because this is a much bigger process than what we're going to cover today. It makes a bigger difference. And so if you're thinking, well, I can't open all my audits at once, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're scanning every building at one time. It just means they're all open for the same time frame. So if I scan a tag that the system thinks is at elementary school, but I scan it over in middle school, then the audit synchronizes things nicely. So allow quick tag verification or on the tag information modal. What this does is on that tag information modal right across the top, it puts a link that says allow quick verification. And so that could be done on a tag by tag basis. It could be done within the audit or even outside the audits if you turn this on. So it kind of affects both active application as well as within audit settings. And then disable tags from being collected if located at another site would basically say, well, we're not going to allow tags that are scanned at a site other than what's indicated in the application to be collected at that site. So those are the things that you might want to look at and make sure are set to your policies prior to starting your audit. So what about archiving assets? The process of archiving assets is something that commonly happens in most districts once a year. And depending on your processes and your procedures, then I'm going to go under admin tools, click archive, and get rid of anything that's in disposal. So I'm going to jump through a couple of things here without tons of explanation because they're not directly related to audits, but it helps me know. So we're going to do an audit at one elementary school today as our example. It's Wright Elementary, and I want to know if there are any tags that need to be disposed of. So I'm going to go to the tags grid, and I'm going to very quickly search the tags at Wright Elementary for anything in a status of disposed before I start my audit. So in my tags grid, I'm going to select Wright Elementary, and in my status filter, I'm going to just look for anything disposed and see if there's something there that I should get rid of. Now, if I'm doing a scan for the entire district, I can just select all sites and status of disposed to kind of get an idea of what kind of tags might be in that status. So I see there are 2 tags that are in a status of disposed. Now, if I initiate my audit with those tags still in system, not archived, then I'll never scan these because I know they're not on site. They will come up as missing in my audit, and I'll have to do something about that in the reconciliation. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and run the archive process under admin tools to get rid of the disposed inventory. So my status disposed, my prior to date, so disposed prior to yesterday or tomorrow. Let's see, I don't even know what today is. Today is the 20th. I should have known that. So anything disposed prior then tomorrow, because I just worked on some of those today. And I'm going to find for Wright Elementary. Now I could do that for every site. And I can just say that I'm prep for audit. So what's going to happen when I archive these, they're going to kind of be set aside in the application. They're not going to be a part of the active database, and therefore they will not be included in my audit. Now, if I happen to come across one and scan it, I will see, oops, I have to enter my tag count. So I know I have 2 tags. I'm just verifying those 2 tags by entering the tag count here. It's kind of a way, the system allows for my brain to catch up with my fingers, make sure I know what I'm doing. So I type in the 2 and click on confirm. So now I've archived those 2 assets, and they will not be included in my audit at that point. All right. So now we're at the point where we're ready to initiate our audit. So under admin tools again, I'm going to click initiate site audit, and we're going to start to see all these things that we put together in our plan so that we choose the right options during this process. So my audit name, and you can come up with a standard naming convention if you need to. I'm going to use 2021 Wright Elementary because I'm just doing Wright Elementary. If I were doing the whole district, I might just say 2021 audit. If I was doing like a specific audit for just students or for just one-to-one devices, I might put that in the name as well, so it stands out really nicely. So then audit 4 is locations. Remember that endpoint, those 3 endpoint locations of room, staff, students that every single one of our assets is assigned to? That's what we're asking here. Now, in my experience, audits go smoother when we separate students into their own audit. So for today's audit, my plan shows that I'm going to do rooms and staff members. We'll do students in a separate audit. So now I can decide if I want to put an audit due date here. What would happen if I put an audit due date, say of next Friday, then my site contact. So in your site setting in the database, you have a contact. That person would be getting an email saying, hey, there's an audit due on Friday. You have to have your scanning complete by that time. So I can put a due date, but it's optional. And then restricting site access basically says, I'm going to restrict the site from marking a location as scan complete. So I'm not going to let them tell me when it's complete. I'm going to force it. I'm going to stop them from deleting an audit, or I'm going to stop them from removing items from an audit. So depending on maybe the experience of your site or how much control you want to have over the audits, we can restrict site access. I'm going to leave mine open because I have lots of people at the site that know exactly what they're doing. I have confidence in them. They work at the site, and I'm just over here at the district. I'm not in their site every day. So I'm going to give them that benefit of the doubt and let them have control over their own audit. So then what sites are we auditing? I can do all sites or a combination, or one site or a combination. We're going to do Wright Elementary only today. And then here we go with our product types. Remember our plan? What products are we going to audit? So we can audit only specific product types, or we can audit everything. So this is going to depend, right, on how your planning committee put together this audit and what exactly you're doing the audit for. I'm going to leave it at all. Room types. So remember, we have the option to say, I'm just going to do classrooms this time, or I'm just going to do libraries. I'm just going to do storage closets. What does the scope of my audit do when it comes to room types? So this gives you an idea of how important those room type designations are. We're going to go ahead and do all of them. We're going to do all staff types. So staff types are where we can indicate some sort of a grouping for our staff. And then the grade levels are more for students, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave them all checked, which won't really play into this audit at all because I'm not auditing students at this time. So then ignore tags modified after. So what that allows me to do is, let's say yesterday, I received 1,500 iPads and they're sitting in my warehouse and they just got entered into the system yesterday. So I know they were scanned, right? So they basically were audited yesterday. I just got them. I scanned them all into the system. And I don't necessarily want to have to scan those 1,500 items again. I could just say, well, just give me, ignore anything that was modified yesterday, or ignore anything that was added to the database as of yesterday. So I can pick that date and those items will not be included in the audit. So once I make my decision in this area, then I can just click on go and my audit will be initiated. Now, before we do that, and while we're on the screen, I want to bring your attention to this left-hand side of the screen where we can save preferences. So let's say I'm going to be creating individual audits for each site that look like this. I can save this preference. I could maybe name it 2021 site audits. And then once that's there, when I'm ready to set up my other group, I would be able to just click on this, and that would, all these options would be set for me. And then I could just change the site for each one, if that makes sense. So especially if you're doing like 15 or 20 products out of 150 or 1,500 products, then you save that preference and you don't have to go pick individually every time you create a new audit. So that comes in really handy when you're doing them individually. I'm going to just go ahead and click go now, and this is going to create my Write Elementary audit. Again, we get that little box that says, oh, here we go. We're going to have to confirm that this is really what you want to do. And so I have to type the word confirm. I cannot hit enter here. I have to take my fingers off the keyboard and click on confirm. So now the system is going to go out and verify that any tag at Write Elementary is not already included in another audit. And if it's not, I'm done. So my audit is ready to go. So now I'm going to change my navigation up here and go click on View Site Audits just to make sure that I have that. Now I'm still looking at the administrative view, and we conduct audits in Site View, but I can see right here all the audits that are still open by default. So these are not in a closed status in my site, in my database. These are all the active audits that are going on. So I can use the filters up here to find specific audits. So I can say, well, just show me the ones for Write Elementary, because I have a lot of junk here, and then hit go, and we'll see how many I have active at Write Elementary. My guess is one, since it worked correctly. So there's my audit for Write Elementary. Right now, it's still a new audit. Nothing has happened. There's no progress here. So that's all I do at the district side, is the initialization process for that audit. Now I'm going to be switching over to the site itself, and we're going to become the site team, right? So we had that audit team, and now we have the task in front of us is to actually start working on that audit. So I'm at Write Elementary. Let's look at the dashboard real quickly. See my notifications panel down here in the bottom left-hand corner shows me that I have one open audit. So I could use that link to get to that audit, or I could also go up here, View Site Audits. Those two links take me to the exact same location. So here I'm looking at district initiated audits for Write Elementary. So I know someone at the district told me it's time to go. It's time to start your audits. So here I see the audit, and you can see when I highlight it or when I float over it, highlights the whole thing. So now I'm going to click on that guy, and this opens the audit itself and shows me all of the rooms and staff members that I need to audit. And I am going to go through each one of these areas very systematically. So notice that rooms have room in colon in front of the room number. So then if I was looking for staff, I could do this, and we'll look at the staff that's involved in the audit, and we see them listed individually. So basically here, I'm going to take my map and I'm going to start going through the rooms. So let's say we're in room 20. So we're starting in room 20. So I'm going to filter my rooms by those that have the 20 in them. So there's room 20. See this grid here? This grid tells me kind of where I'm at any given time. I see that room 20 is in a status of new, which means I have not done anything in room 20 yet. I have 8 items in room 20. None of them have been verified. None of them have been found in another room, and all 8 of them are missing. Notice all of my assets at this point are missing. That's what happened when I initiated the audit. I got a snapshot of the database, and every asset went into a status for the audit only. If you're in the live database, you'll see the real status. Or for the audit only, they're in a status of missing. So as I scan each tag, the tag will change to verified if I scan it in the room the system thought it was in, or found if I scan it somewhere else, or misplaced if I scan something in this room that wasn't expected in the room. So your found and misplaced items are always going to balance each other out. So let's go through a little bit of an example there. So I'm going to edit room 20. And now here I go. Remember our plan? Step in the room, turn to the right and work all the way around the wall back to the door, and then look to the middle and then look up. So basically that's what I'm doing. I start to scan the tags. One of the questions I get here is, can I type the tags in? Yes, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm typing them. I can also scan them, which is much, much faster than typing. So I put in my first tag. The system found that tag in as indicated in room 20. So it's verified. Verified is good. That's the best possible outcome. So there's my next tag. Now I've verified 2. So I scan the next tag and I've verified 3, and so on and so forth. So as I move through this process, I just continue to scan assets until I get to the end. Now notice, I'm going to kind of go through these quickly, which is what you would see, right? If things were going really well, everything I'm scanning is coming up roses and verified, and we love that. But what happens when something comes up as something other than verified? So I scan tag number 1495 and the system says, hey, this tag was added as misplaced. This means that tag 495 was expected in a different room. The system thought it was in a different room, but I scanned it here, and that's fine. I don't need to take any action necessarily at this point, depending on my district process. Now I'm able to go in and make a note on that if I want to, or if I can, but I don't have to. Depends again on my status. So I have gone through and I've scanned every asset that I found in this room. There were 9 of them, 7 verified, which means 7 of them were expected to be in that room. 1 has not been scanned at all, and 1 was added as misplaced, which means it was expected to be somewhere else, but I have it here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to hit the finished flag, which means I'm done scanning. And we want to make sure that everyone that's scanning knows that we never hit the finish flag in a room unless we're 100% sure that we finished scanning everything in the room. So notice now room 20 becomes a status of scan complete. And you'll notice my grid is changed a little bit for that room. My totals are different as well. Remember I said found and misplaced are always going to be balanced. Notice now I have 1 misplaced, which means I have 1 found. So that tag 495 that I scanned in room 20 that was expected somewhere else, whatever room that was, that tag is now being listed as found somewhere else. It's like, hey, somebody else scanned that somewhere else. So don't worry about it. So what about my next room? So let's move into room 21. So I got to find the room first and then edit. Now the best practice really is following the map, not the list, right? I could be running in all kinds of different directions in the building if I'm following the list, because the list is alphabetical. So I really want to follow the map. It's much more efficient. So then I just start again, start at the door, work my way around, and just scan my item. So each item that I verify or that I scan, that's supposed to be, there's going to be verified. Notice we have an opportunity here to set a condition. So if you want to collect asset conditions during an audit, when you have somebody actually eyeballing something, you can do that here. It's not a required field. So I just go through and I scan all of the items for this room. Good thing they're in numerical order, because that makes it quick for me to enter the numbers. So things are going really good for my audit. And here's something that was misplaced. So not expected in room 21, was expected somewhere else, but that's okay. Now, if I'm not through scanning, so I've done my wall all the way around to the door, but something happened. I got a phone call, I got pulled out. For some reason, I did not get to the middle of the room and I didn't get to the ceiling. So I'm going to close this room instead of finishing my scan. That would indicate that I know that I need to go back, right, to that room And so now we notice that room 21 is in a status of in progress. So if I look at the statuses for rooms, we have 4 statuses: new, in progress, scan complete, and closed. So new means I haven't done anything. In progress means, well, I've started, but I have not verified finished scanning. So I'm not sure that I got everything. Scan complete means I am positive I got everything in that room. And then for closed, things need to be so that when I approve the audit for that site, all of the rooms will be closed at that point. So that's rooms. So what about the staff folks in this particular audit? There's a couple of things that can happen here. So I can go into the staff member. So let's say I have a person in front of me, Cherry Albin, and I want to scan for her. I can do a search on her first name or last name, and I'll find her staff record. So that's just like the room. So I can open that here and scan her item. So she hands me the tag that is issued to her, and I scan it. So when I scan that tag, if it's issued to Cherry in the system, it's going to end up being verified. And she goes, oh, here, but I have this other laptop as well that I use that's assigned to me. So I'm going to scan that one. Now, in this situation that we're seeing, that second laptop was actually in the system issued to someone else, a different staff member. So the system is going to come up and say, hey, well, number one, the tag is marked as missing on the audit, just like every other asset in the beginning. But it's expected to be in the hands of Amber Amato at Wright Elementary. So at this point, I can say, hey, Cherry, this was supposed to be Amber's. Is it yours now? What happened? And depending on the answer, I have a couple of things I can do. If I mark the tag as misplaced, that means it really is in Cherry's hands, and I'm going to defer the decision on what to do about that to someone else in the reconciliation. Or Cherry can say, oh yeah, well, Amber, she's gone from the district, and my principal just said I could use her laptop for now. So in that case, then I would actually physically transfer that particular asset to Cherry, right? So I'm going to transfer from Amber to Cherry, and I might put a note here that says that, let's see, Amber left the district. So then I can click on go. And I've basically taken care of that discrepancy during the audit. So I'm going to finish my scanning for Cherry, and I'm going to bring up, let's see, we'll do Janet Barrick. So I'm going to look for her on her last name, and there's Janet Barrick, and I'm going to scan for her. And she hands me, an item that I scan, and that particular item was actually issued out to Dawn Blacklock. So I asked what happened here, and she goes, oh, well, Dawn is on an extended leave of absence. Let's left this in my classroom. So I just happen to know, because I'm familiar with the site, that she should not have this particular item. I can go ahead and mark it as misplaced. And then later on, I can deal with that in the reconciliation. So then I can finish Janet. So depending on what happens or what comes up, we're going to have some different experiences that way. So let's see. Right now we have several areas. So let's say we go through the building, we have our scanning teams, they've all gone through the building, we come back together at the end and we're going, we're done. Well, my team leader at that point is going to come in here and take a look at the status of things and go, well, maybe we're not so done. And so this particular example is going to be the worst audit ever, because we don't have time to go through all the assets that are in this audit for this session, right? But the team leader is basically going to go, okay, well, what do we have that's in a status maybe of news still that we haven't addressed? So then we'll see all the news. And what do we have in the status that's in progress? Did we finish all those in progress? If not, maybe we need to go ahead and finish those in progress things. So we're going to meet, we're going to talk about what we saw, what we missed, and then, you know, kind of like ready, set, go, break. And we're going to all go out and fix whatever issue was found and then come back together again. So as soon as I'm happy as team leader that my audit is ready, that I've done everything in my site that's possible to do, then I'm going to approve the audit. So there's something I can do prior to that in my audit reports. Notice right above the grid, I can drop this down and do a district audit listing, which will basically give me this report prior to my approval here in a spreadsheet. And it shows me exactly the status of each room and what I have finished doing. So I can do that just as a backup kind of thing. So I'm going to approve the audit. I'm going to say we're done. And then it basically says, okay, when you approve an audit, that means scanning is all complete and you want to select confirm below. So we'll see once that's done that our rooms go from closed. So everything now is going to be in either closed or in scan complete process. And I no longer can get to the edit here and do anything in the pencils. There's under actions, I can click on this audit details. Let's find one of the rooms that we actually were in and look at it. So I can click on this audit details report under actions, and it will show me basically what happened in this audit. So I verified these, I found this one, and this one was misplaced. Now see the little note here? So as that site person, I can leave a note here that will come into the reconciliation process. So when the district goes to start reconciling, they'll see my note. So I can put a note here to the extent of this particular Compact 500B laptop. Wasn't expected to be in room 20, but now being used in room 20. So I'm going to give them an instruction to go ahead and collect this asset. So when the district does the reconciliation process, the room in the live application or the laptop in the live application going to be collected to room 20. So from that day forward, it's recorded in the right location. So whatever happens, whatever notes that I put here, the district is going to see. So I'm going to want to make sure to instruct my team to go make notes in certain assets that you may not expect them to make a note on everything. It might just be a policy for your district to collect everything to where it was scanned after an audit. Other than that, you might have an instruction for your folks to go in and make a note if you have to collect something from a staff member. Make sure you make a specific note, or something got transferred from one staff member to another. Make sure there's a specific note. Make sure you check to make sure that was on the up and up before you did it. Okay, so basically this this audit now is closed and it needs to be approved, or it was approved already by the site, and now it needs to be reconciled. So the reconciliation process is what we're going to look at in the next section, and it's a district process. So you'll know that as a district, when I'm looking at this audits list in the administrative view, and I go to view site audits, I'm going to see that that audit for Wright Elementary is ready for me to reconcile. And we'll get to that point. Let me go ahead and just get these filtered by site. We'll get to that point in the next session, which is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time. So we're going to start at the reconciliation process. So at this point, we're ready to address any questions that you guys had as we were going through the process. Did you have any questions at all about what we did or what we went through? If you want to post the question in the question and answer session, that's great. At this point, there's not much in the chat, so If you wanted to go ahead and do it in the chat, that would be fine as well. So any questions at this point about the process of scanning at the site?
Gina, you do have one in the chat.
Oh, I see that now. So if you accidentally initiate an audit, how can you delete? So audits, once they're initiated, the only thing you can do is kind of go through the process. You might be able to contact support. So let me share my screen again here. Let's take a look. So if I go into my view site audits, everything that's ever been initiated is here. This particular one, this Learning ISD back in 2014, this audit, nothing was ever done on it, but there's still, I cannot take action against that audit except for to go through the process of reconciliation, or I could possibly contact support and say, hey, I accidentally started this audit. Make sure you give them the name of the audit and ask if they can remove it for you, because there's a lot of stuff that's touched in the background of the application when you initiate an audit. So you can go through the reconciliation process, and it would be pretty obvious because you're basically going to ignore everything in the reconciliation. And you could even put notes when you say ignore everything that says this audit was started in error or something, or you could initiate that conversation with support. So then I see a question from Chris. Can you scan in serial numbers instead of tag numbers during an audit? Yes, you can scan in serial numbers instead of tag numbers. The only thing I would say is know that in the application, serial numbers are not required for every asset, and also they're not unique identifiers for every asset. So depending on how your district is set up, the application itself does not require a unique identifier. So tag numbers are the better go-to, but sometimes you don't have a tag, you lose the tag number or something like that, and you need to scan the serial number, you can do that. Where do we sign up for session 3 and 4? There is a link for that. Deborah, do you have access to that?
I will get it.
Registration link, can you dump it in the chat, please?
I will. Give me just a second.
So the process, and one of the reasons we've had a little bit of struggle for these last 2 sessions was that you need to register for the session before you can attend it. So make sure when we get this link in here that you go through the process of registering so that you get the actual link sent to you ahead of time. So we'll put that in the chat here real quick. Deborah will find it. Any other questions? Any reason why the links are sent late? Carlos, that's a hard one to answer. I think that we just had this issue in this group where maybe the link that was attached to your first email was actually the link for the meeting instead of the registration link, and it just got all discombobulated. So just make sure that you're registered first. And I think that last minute links that were sent out yesterday, we're just trying to fix the problem that we created when we included the incorrect link in the first email. So it shouldn't be, it's not a normal thing. It was just human error, and hopefully we can get that all lined out. So Deborah has just posted the link to register for the next 2 sessions so that you can go ahead and get that registration done. And then the system should send you an email pretty quickly right after registration. You'll get the calendar invite. So yeah, I think those late links this morning and yesterday were just because we didn't realize what had happened in the beginning and people weren't registered. All right, so any other questions about audits? So I want to thank everyone for your time, for attending the session. I will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone who attended with the link to the resources, as well as a link to a survey about the session itself. You're welcome to wait until all 4 series to respond to that survey, but the link will be in all the emails as well. So anyone that, let's see, Bianca, yeah, we can have someone call you directly. No problem. Can you verify which district you're at, Bianca? And that way we can find your contact information a little bit quicker. Thank you. Okay, so I will make sure that somebody gets hold of you, Bianca, so we can cover those individual questions. All right, so tomorrow's session is all about, oh, look what I did. I got ahead of myself a little bit. Is all about reconciliation. So we've already gone through part 1 and part 2. Part 3 is going to be reconciliation. We do that tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time. So if you haven't registered, please follow that link that Deborah put in the chat and make sure that you get registered for that session. So we'll be talking about what happens. This is normally a district level process, the reconciliation. Now, if you're a site level person, it certainly doesn't hurt for you to understand what has to happen, because guaranteed those district folks are going to need you to answer a lot of the questions in the reconciliation process. And some districts do allow the sites to do their own reconciliation. So if there are no further questions, then I will say that let's see, if we do not have time, we don't have the link on time tomorrow, who do we contact? Support directly. They're the quickest way, honestly, to get the right information. So if you will go register, the system will send you a link. I've registered myself. I've seen it work right when we get the right link, which is what Deborah just posted in the chat session. So Amy, please make sure to follow that link. Maybe Deborah, you can paste it one more time just to have it being the last thing in the chat. If you click on that link right now, it should take you to the registration. And when you register, you should get an email very quickly from that registration system. So if anyone has actually followed the link and it didn't work, please let me know right now and we'll jump on that.